Welcome to this lesson all about your stress bucket. So this is where we take the context that you've been given, kind of the education and the information, and you really start to explore what this looks like for you. So you have this worksheet here downloadable with this lesson. I will be working off mine here as well to go through each one of these categories with you. So before we go through those categories, I want to help you understand what I mean when I'm talking about a stress bucket. So I want you to imagine that your stress bucket is your nervous system. It is basically the capacity that you have to carry things before you start to become symptomatic. So symptomatic could be an angry outburst, anxious, depressed, chronic pain, etc. So realizing that our systems do not have this limitless capacity to carry. We can only carry so much before we start to break down or become symptomatic in some way. And those symptoms are not just there to torture us. Those symptoms are there to get our attention, to kind of throw up a red flag to say, hey, pay attention, something needs to change. But because we live in a society that glamorizes hustle culture and is all about productivity and the next promotion, and productivity-based self-worth has become something that I think all of us carry around to some extent. We often shove away those symptoms, which either causes them to get louder or causes our symptoms to kind of just say, well, she's not going to listen. And that's when they start to manifest in different ways. So the good news is that our capacity to carry can be increased, and it can increase in a few ways. So I want you to think about your nervous system, your capacity to carry things before you get stuck in survival mode, start to be symptomatic with anxiety, depression, etc., as this bucket. And we all have this stress bucket, and yours looks different than mine. We carry different things. Our capacity might be a little bit different. And what kind of shapes our bucket could be things like genetics, unhealed trauma. Trauma can shrink our bucket. Stress can shrink our bucket, meaning it takes a lot less before we become symptomatic. And the good news is we can heal trauma, we can reduce stress, and that can help to give us a more carrying capacity. The other thing we can do is we can manage how much we put in our bucket, right? We can look at all of the things that go into our bucket on a regular basis and say, well, I'm going to put less in so that when life inevitably hands me unpredictable things, I have more capacity to carry it. We've all been in that phase of our life, and I'm going to guess if you're here in this course, you may be there right now where it's like, if one more thing happens, I'm gonna lose it. And that's because you are living with your stress bucket full to the brim. It takes one drop for it to overflow. This is also sometimes why we overreact to really simple things. It's not that that thing maybe was particularly triggering for us. It's just our bucket was already full when that thing happened. And that was, the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the one drop that caused us to overflow. So we can make our bucket bigger. We can put less in. And my personal favorite approach is, can we build up enough nervous system and body awareness to recognize when we are getting full? And do we know the tools that help us to poke holes in our bucket throughout the day and let water out? So we're going to talk about how to approach all of those things here in this lesson. But the first thing you have to do is to gain awareness as to what you're carrying around in your bucket. And so in this worksheet, I have laid out a variety of categories for you to explore. And I want to give you some details and some context for each of those. So the first is decision making. So asking yourself, what decisions do you make a day? Are you the primary decision maker in your household? What kind of decisions do you have to make it work? Maybe in just this season of your life, do you have some big looming decisions? And so just a laundry list of what decisions do you make on a regular basis, and what big decisions do you have coming up that you might be kind of carrying around with you right now. The next one is sleep and recovery. So like I mentioned in a previous lesson, what does your sleep and recovery look like? And this isn't just like sitting on the couch and scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, like deep, meaningful rest, something analog, reading, just sitting in a hammock. Are you somebody who maybe has a pretty intense exercise routine? Are you giving yourself rest days and taking those rest days seriously? Like your rest day is not going for a run. Like your rest day is resting and allowing your body to recoup from that. So how many hours of sleep are you getting? Are you going to bed and waking up at a consistent time or not? What does your rest and recovery from physical activity look like? And then do you make time for actual like filling rest, right? We rarely feel more rested after scrolling TikTok for 20 minutes on the couch or 2 hours. Depends on the day, right? But we do feel a little bit more rested and rejuvenated after we've done other activities. So just taking an audit, and I want you to do this from a place of being this detective and this scientist. There's no place for shame, blame, guilt, or judgment here. We're curious. We are interested. You're here because you're taking a proactive role in getting out of survival mode. Amazing. So as you make this list, this is not to give yourself lashings along the way. The idea is just to say, I'm going to put every detail down here because I want to see what's keeping me stuck, and then I'm going to take radical accountability for the pieces of this that I can control. So if you're already thinking like, oh, I know I'm doing this and I shouldn't do that, let's throw that narrative away. We are collecting all of this information from our life because it's all information. That's what it is, just information. Okay, the next category is your thoughts. What unhelpful thoughts do you have that are on repeat? Negative body image thoughts, catastrophizing about work or your relationships. So there are obviously thoughts that come up throughout our day that are specific to different situations that we engage in. But I want you to put here in your stress bucket kind of your like top 5 billboard hits of unhelpful thoughts. What you know always comes up for you. I'm not enough. Is it perfectionism, etc.? So what kind of either category of thinking or specific thoughts that you know just add load to your system? That's not helpful. All right, the next category is exercise. So this could be, I want this to just be kind of a non-biased audit of exercise or movement in your life. So if you aren't moving, right, being sedentary actually adds stress to our system, but so does really intense, heavy exercise. So an intense workout, something like a CrossFit workout or an interval training or boot camp class, that puts us into a state of fight or flight temporarily. And that's okay. It's amazing to train our nervous system to engage in fight or flight and then get regulated. But if you're living here in survival mode and then you add load to your system and you don't have the tools to bring you back to your baseline, well, that can be keeping you stuck. So what does your exercise and your movement habits look like in your life right now? Then work stress. So I want you to, and work could be whatever is your labor. So if you are a stay-at-home parent, like your labor is the household duties, the childcare duties. Your work could be actually at a job. It could be volunteer work. So something that you consider kind of your labor, your work. What stresses or worries go along with that? Then looking at your internal environment. So some of the things we previously talked about. Is there autoimmune conditions that you're dealing with? How is the nutrition? Are there digestive issues? So really just kind of taking a look at what could be going on in your internal environment that might be sending stress signals through your nervous system. External environment. So are you living in a safe neighborhood? Do you feel like your living space is really cluttered, right? We know from a lot of research that clutter keeps our mind constantly busy. So how does your external environment feel? Also could be the energy of this environment. Is there, really loud roommates or neighbors or partners within that environment? So again, it all belongs in this exploration. Putting it down on that piece of paper could give you a really good aha moment or a new lever to pull in helping to decrease some of the load on your nervous system. Then we have our relationships. So looking at the relationships in your life, the ones that maybe this could even be a place where you acknowledge relationships that help you to feel less symptomatic, more calm, more regulated, but also the relationships in our life that add load. And it could even be a part of your relationship. So maybe your relationship with your partner is pretty healthy, but finances are really stressful. That conversation is hard. So exploring relationships and what parts of those relationships could contribute to making this bucket heavy. And then the final category that I'll have you explore as to things that go in your bucket would be respiration habits. So we're going to talk more about breath work in another lesson, but I want you to just pay attention right now. Are you a nose or a mouth breather? And you'll write that down when you do this worksheet, just nose breather, mouth breather, or nose breather during the day. I think I'm a mouth breather at night. I drool a lot. And then, do you have short, shallow chest breaths? So when you are breathing, does it stay kind of right here? Or do you have kind of deep, casual belly breaths? So that's all I want you to assess right now, and I'll tell you what all that means in a future lesson. And so this is kind of stress bucket lesson 1, is just this audit. So that is the work that I want to invite you into next, is to audit all of the things that are going into your bucket. And then the final categories to consider are what might be contributing to the size of your bucket. And so you'll see on that worksheet, those could be genetic factors, health history, right? Do you have some kind of traumatic accident or broken limb, or that still kind of gives you some chronic pain? So just exploring what genetic components could there be, what health history do you have, and acknowledging any trauma. And again, not needing to go into any detail, but is there possibly unhealed trauma that is causing your bucket to be small right now? So that's it for this lesson. This lesson is just to invite you into this exploration of what is, and in the next lesson, we are going to talk about what you can do with that information. So take some deep breaths. This work can be hard. You are putting it all on paper. But my invitation for you is, when this is done, when you see it all on paper, I want you to look at that piece of paper. And I want you just to ask yourself if it makes sense. Looking at everything that you come up with, does it make sense that you're stuck in survival mode? Does it make sense that you might be struggling with anxiety or depression? And odds are the answer is going to be like, yeah, look at this. Look at everything that's on this paper. Nobody carries this well. Nobody taught me how to carry this load. And that is what you are here for. And that is what it means to invite yourself into that seat of self-compassion, is to recognize your shared humanness. You don't suck because you're not carrying this load well. This load is heavy and nobody has taught you how to carry it well, and/or it's so heavy that nobody carries it well, right? I use a lot of fitness analogies. Like I said in my intro video, I've been a certified personal trainer for over a decade, right? You wouldn't expect yourself to walk up to a 500-pound barbell in the gym and pick it up. No, of course not. You haven't trained for that. Nobody's taught you the good form for that. And yet you expect yourself to walk up to a 500-pound bucket of life things and to carry it, and carry it perfectly, carry it well, right? We all have these unrealistic expectations for ourselves. So my invitation with this exercise is just to really put it all out there, to give yourself awareness that everything that you put down is a possible lever that you can pull to help shift out of survival mode, to take a really proactive role in your mental health, and to help you step into that place of self-compassion and humanness of, okay, it makes sense. It makes sense, and I'm here to do something different. All right, that's it for this lesson, and I'll see you in the next one.